Hi, Rishi. Good to see you today. I guess today we're going to have a little chat about one of your favorite copywriting techniques, demonstrating expertise. Uh, I don't know. I guess during this chat, we're going to talk about it, and hopefully, the people who are watching this are going to find some actionable advice they can take to their product pages that will help them with their conversion rates.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to answering. This is completely unprepared. You might hear a dog in the background, and that's all part of the show. But Simon, you're going to ask me some questions. I'm unprepared. I'm going to answer them to the best of my ability, and we want to add value and express on behalf of the readers. You have thought about some questions, and I'm hoping to answer all of those questions.
All right. Well, let's get started. So, demonstrating expertise, one of your favorite copywriting techniques. Tell me about it. Why is it one of your favorites?
So one of the things that we are taught as copywriters is to the copy should not be about us. It should be about the reader. We'll say things like, don't wee all over the copy. And the idea is, it's a noble one. It makes sense. It's the reader doesn't care about me. The reader doesn't care about my company, my incredible packaging. They care about a transaction where they're going to give me money and I'm going to give them a product that does the job, and they move on with their lives. And while this is true, I think that there are, the reality is that we're living in a highly complex world where products are highly specialized. So it's not like there is one it's not there's one general purpose product that solves general purpose problems. If that was the case, that would be a different scenario. We're talking about very specific types of products that solve very specific types of problems for the consumer. And I think it's important in that context, if I put on the hat of the consumer and if I'm trying to buy an electric bike, I don't want to buy an electric bike necessarily from someone who makes me feel good about myself. Not to say that that doesn't matter, but what matters more to me is that inventor or retailer is able to demonstrate to me that they make the best damn electric bike in the world for the price point that I can afford. And how they do that is up to them, but that's what I'm expecting. And this is why it's such a powerful conversion strategy.
Right. And so not only do they have to say make the best electric bike at that price point, they have to be able to demonstrate it. They have to be able to make you believe that they do it. And if they don't, like you said, they can make you feel as good about yourself as you want, but they need to believe that that bike is the one that they need because you know what you're doing.
When I go to my doctor, I am expecting him to or her to have 50 times more knowledge about this weird back discomfort I'm having. And I would be very unsatisfied if my doctor said, you know your body best, you should do what makes sense to you. It's like, no, I'm paying you because I want you to give me a very specific prescription. And I think this is what the consumer expects. And you bring up a really good point, which is that, and I want to address this because what happens is that for the doctor, for example, again, going back to the doctor analogy, even though we can apply this to electric bikes and we can apply this to, moisturizing creams, we can apply this to any product, really. But the point is that because for the inventor of that product, this is something they've dealt with so many times, they tend to feel like, oh, it's not that special. It's just all this is like a moisturizing cream. What's the big deal? Well, for the guy who's suffering with dry skin, who has never experienced the wonderful magic of Nivea, please sponsor the show. This is an incredible discovery. And so if you don't communicate that enthusiasm to me, then I'm never going to discover your product, because I won't have enough energy to actually pull the trigger. So you kind of owe it to me to express that enthusiasm. And I would say that the best vehicle for expressing the enthusiasm is not by saying, oh, we think it's, wonderful for you to kind of solve this dry skin problem, is to actually prove to me that you have developed a formulation which no one else has access to, which you have evidence that works the best. And that gets me enthusiastic, is your expertise. So, and I think sometimes as creators, we lose sight of that. So you want to kind of essentially force yourself to think about this new visitor who's never solved this problem. Empathize with them. I think all copywriting is about empathy, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, as I'm looking at it, as I'm thinking about it, how are you going to show it? Like if I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this product page and saying, what am I going to do to demonstrate my expertise in the product page? Where do you start? Where do you start for your clients?
Yeah. So we have a very specific process. We have a very specific interrogation process, which we've been developing over the last 4 years. But what I can tell you is that there are many ways for you to kind of just get started. So the first mental model I like to use is, imagine you are on Shark Tank and you are trying to get an investor to invest in one of the sharks to invest in your business. And you show them this moisturizing cream and they're like, there's so many moisturizing creams out there. What would you say? Would you just like fall on the ground and roll on the floor? No, you would stand up and you would defend your point. And you would defend your point by talking about how this is actually very different from other moisturizing creams. And so my point is that that's one useful mental model to think about. Another mechanism is, I can give you some tips or common areas that we cover when we are trying to demonstrate expertise. So the first one is, I want to communicate to the buyer that we are aware of all the options that are there in the marketplace and that we've tried them all. Maybe not all of them, but we've tried a bunch of them, right? So I want to buy moisturizing cream from someone who says, I never actually wanted to create a moisturizing cream company. I just wanted to solve the problem. And so I went to the retail store and I bought 50 creams and none of them worked. And so I left my job and I said, I'm just going to solve this damn problem. That's one way of doing it. Another way to do that is to actually talk about really interesting details about the science of moisture and the human skin and some really interesting facts and figures that tell me that you really understand the subject. And then the third thing you can do is to talk about the difficult journey that you went on to solve this problem, with all the side missions and all of the setbacks and all of the challenges that you had. Because if you were to just say, we collected a bunch of scientists and we wanted to create moisturizing cream and we just created it, and here is the product. I mean, that's fine. It's not very exciting. It's much more interesting for me to know about you almost had a breakthrough and then realized that it was not a breakthrough, and how that was a setback, but you got up and you did it again. And whatever those challenges are, businesses have incredible challenges. Sometimes when I talk to clients, they're like, oh, we never really had difficulty bringing this product to market. I do not believe that for 1 second. You've forgotten it. You have had lots of difficulties. You have difficulties every single week. But what happens is that we tend to forget about them, or we feel awkward talking to the buyer about it. Like, why should I tell the buyer about the fact that I failed with 47 prototypes making this moisturizing cream? Well, actually, the buyer really places a lot of value on that. It's called illusion of labor. There is a deep psychological need in us, or there's a process in us where when we see something that was really hard to produce, this is the reason why a bonsai tree, which took 400 years of pruning, is worth 10,000 times more than the plant that I have at home, is because of the illusion of labor. There's actual labor that goes into that increases the perceived value. So
no, that really makes sense. I do think that we see that a lot, where it's just when we look at something, we intuitively know that if something was easy, it's not as worthwhile as something that had challenges to it. I
would say another thing is that you're being very selfish. I mean, the creator is being selfish. This is not a marketing trick. This is you. I mean, if I were to sit in a very fancy restaurant and which I don't go to all the time, but I go there once in a while, it's a special event. And, the sommelier came and gave me a bottle of wine, or, brought a bottle of wine and said, yeah, it's just grapes, dead grapes. Well, it may be true, but you're just killing my pleasure, And so it for the reader, it actually is much more enriching to understand that whole journey that you went on. You kind of owe it to them. And so if you don't do it for yourself, do it for the reader.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly the case that, take, for example, the skin moisturizing example there. I mean, when someone's looking for a skin moisturizer, I mean, there's, hundreds of them. Go to your local pharmacy or grocery store or whatever, and there's hundreds of them. But if they're searching for it, there's a reason they're searching for it, right? And when you let them in on the journey you had, right, it shows them that you have thought about, you have put that sweat, that effort, that time into understanding what it is they want and developing a product that is going to do for them. And, it gives them that confidence, right? They believe you, they trust you because they've seen, what you've gone through to get there.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes I like, that makes sense to me. So what specific ways can we take that and translate that on the page? Like what sort of things are we talking about?
Well, again, I think those three things that we talked about, letting the reader know that that there were lots of alternatives out there. You considered all of them, studied all of them, sharing interesting facts and figures about that specific problem that, again, demonstrates expertise. And then finally, the difficult journey that you went on to solve for that. I think one of the things that is worth mentioning here is that I think as the listener is listening to all this, product pages typically have fairly short content. And so someone's listening to this, this all makes sense, but what they're describing is going to cause my word count to inflate by like 700%. And I don't know, it's going to look like a wall of text, and I don't like that and stuff like that. So I actually, that's a really interesting problem. And we actually have another article. If you just go to our search box on the website, on the blog, you'll see that if you search for long form sales pitch, you will actually find another article that we've written where we actually talk about the design. We've invented a design solution for this, where you're actually able, without changing the layout of the page, you're able to actually express a lot more information in that page itself. So go read that article, and that'll explain to you the actual mechanism of how to insert this into your product page. And we also have tons of case studies, by the way. So if you go to our case studies page, you can see those case studies where you'll see how we use the demonstration of expertise to improve conversion rates. And Simon, if you're interested, I'm even happy to share with you a couple of like my favorite stories of, because there are so many ways in which expertise can be demonstrated. And so, but I'll let you decide what questions you want to ask.
No, it's funny. As you started talking about some of our case studies there, I'm like, okay, which ones are Rishi's favorites? Because I know I have my own personal favorites, but what are some of yours?
So one of the ones that I want, and again, this is a recency bias, so I'm remembering something that we've just done recently, but we do apply this technique for all our case studies. But one of the case studies that we've done recently is for a website called Canvas Prints. And basically what they do is they have a piece of canvas and they stretch it over a wooden frame. And then they have a piece of technology that is able to transfer an image from a printer to the canvas. And so you upload your picture, your family picture, and then they kind of do the rest for you. And it's a highly commoditized space. There's tons of competitors out there, and they all basically do the same thing. And so we thought that and it just makes sense intuitively, if the consumer has come to your website and they've got 5 other tabs open, 5 other websites that are basically doing the same thing, solving the same problem, well, one way to differentiate yourself is to say, our prices are 20% lower than those competitors, but that's a race to the bottom. But the only other viable option that we have is to demonstrate expertise, to prove to the reader, while in that brief moment where you have their attention and they're sitting on your tab, to somehow communicate to them that these 4 other open tabs are a waste of their time. And that's what you achieve with demonstrating expertise. And so what we did was, first of all, I didn't know what was unique about them. And this is the thing, is that there was nothing on the website that actually demonstrated expertise. So I went to the client and I said, well, I see you're using a certain type of fabric for the canvas, a thread type. And I forget the technical term for it, but I said, why is it this? They're like, oh my God, funny you ask. There's a proper scientific reason for it. We've actually tested, most of our competitors use this other thread type. And it's actually something we used to use as well. And it's cheaper. It is a good alternative, but it actually misses on these few key attributes that we get with our thread type. I was like, okay, I'm going to start noting it down. And so I started making notes. Then they talked about the way they stretch the canvas over the frame. And apparently there's a science to that. Then they talked about the printer they used to transfer the image. And they actually had just recently made an incredible investment, because this printer was like 40% more expensive than the printers they had previously. They made an investment in this because they realized that this printer was, and we're talking about the industrial size printers, it's not just a home printer, was way more effective in terms of vibrancy of color. In very specific, it wasn't just like vibrancy of color, it was like there were certain hues that came across much better. And so I made a note of that. I was like, oh my God, this is like amazing. And so just in that interrogation process, I was able to pick up on all these interesting facts and figures that we were able to then showcase on their product page. And another example is baking steel. And it's a really simple piece of steel that you put in the oven, and you put a pizza on it, and it bakes the pizza much faster than the oven would. And it's because of the wonderful conductive properties of steel. And they had left their product page at that. Simply said, we have a 2-inch thick sheet of steel. And they said it makes the best pizza you've ever tasted. And here is all the social proof. Here are tons of reviews, and here is a video of how we made the pizza. And my point was like, no, it's so much more. And I went into the laws of thermodynamics, and I put an equation on the product page for the conductive property of steel, which I'm 100%, I certainly didn't understand it, and I'm pretty sure most readers didn't understand it. But what it did was it communicated to the buyer that we really, really, really geek out about this stuff, which is a demonstration of expertise, which creates an illusion of labor, which makes them appreciate us more, and it statistically improved conversion rates. So it absolutely, definitely, most certainly works.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said the baking steel example, because I think one of the things, the first time we met, I told you about that, about how baking steel, I had seen that product page before we had met, and I was absolutely fascinated by what was going on, because, like you pointed out, like even for me thinking, hey, I want to make some pizza at home, I didn't think about any of these things that they were talking about. I didn't think about, why my oven was a problem, none of that stuff. So, I mean, and just to, even as you were talking about canvas prints, I actually felt myself drawn into the story, right? And just thinking about what it meant, right? In terms of the different.
I'm so glad you said that, Simon, because this whole journey started for me. I remember, I will never forget this, in 2010, which is a long time ago. In 2010, I met one of my earliest clients. He happened to be in the same town that I was in, because he was traveling for a trade show. And I met him, and he was selling a cherry supplement. And I met him for lunch. He lived a couple of hours away from me, so he was in my part of town, so I had a chance to meet him. And I was talking to him, and I was saying, what's the big deal? Because I'd never had a cherry supplement before, and I didn't really care for it. And he was just popping them all the time. And he just went into this like 30-minute poetic story about why cherries matter so much, why the production process mattered, because he had a very specific production process. His family for the last 3 generations had been cherry farmers. I mean, there was such deep, rich history. And I was like, Steve, I don't know I've been working with you for 6 months. I don't know any of this. And I was like, if we can figure out a way to bottle this and communicate this to it's just, we owe it to the buyer who, a lady in Connecticut who kind of just stumbled on our website, doesn't know any of this. We owe it to this person to get the, because we're preventing them from making a bad choice by buying a inferior cherry supplement from a mass produced retailer on some of the website. But if we don't give her a compelling reason, she's not going to know any better and she's going to leave. And so that's why it matters so much. So yes, the reason I came up with this idea was because when I talk to my customers, that's what I got from them when I would talk to them. And I was like, wait a minute, but you don't talk to all of the visitors on your website the way you talk to me. So what if we could somehow scale this and bring it to your product page? And that's the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I find so often that when we're speaking to someone else, we sort of take for granted what we know and understand, and often just assume that, they know at least some of it or part of it.
Or that they don't care, or that they don't care. I mean, why would they care about the manufacturing process of this cherry supplement? Well, some of them really care. And the fact that it's not even available I'm not saying you have to force everyone to go through all of those details. But again, search for the term long form sales pitch and you'll see a very specific mechanism where people can sell. It's almost like a choose your own adventure. Some buyers will come in and they'll say, hey, I just want the short 1 paragraph pitch. I just need to see a hint of expertise. Someone else will say, well, a hint is not good enough. I want to really know you're an expert. Well, there's a long form sales pitch for them. And so you want to kind of like, that's why you need to have, that's why you need to express this. And some people will care. Some people will care a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah. So for someone who's watching this and says, all right, I believe it. I'm picking up what you're putting down here, Rishi, and they want to go ahead and take their product page or their client's product page and demonstrate expertise. Give me 3 things they can do, 3 actionable things.
Yeah, I mean, again, I those 3 things that we mentioned earlier, I'll go back to those same 3 things. You have to somehow communicate that you have considered. And by the way, this is not a stretch of imagination. All of my clients actually know a lot about their competitive landscape. They buy those products, they use those products, they know all the ways in which their product is better than those alternatives. So I'm just asking you to articulate that. I'm just saying, if Canvas prints buys prints from all of their competitors. They know their shipping rates. They know how fast their turnaround is. They know what happens when there is a mistake and how their customer service deals with it. Well, why aren't we communicating this on the product page? And so that whole idea of like, we've looked at all these alternatives. The second one of, interesting facts and figures about that, which is a great example of expertise. And then the third one is to just talk about the near challenges or the near, the man going to moon is actually so much richer because we almost couldn't do it, right? It was an incredibly hard thing to do. It'd be kind of boring if they said, we put a bunch of 500 scientists, we designed a rocket, sent man to moon, boom, project done. I don't know if we would care about it as much then. But the fact that we nearly failed and the fact that, we had the severe competition from the Soviet Union makes it that much more interesting. And so that's a specific mechanism. Now, to answer the other part of the question is like, how do you even kind of get started? I have a very simple technique for that. Take a piece of paper and just don't worry about the structure and just start writing. Imagine you are talking to someone or writing a letter to someone who is very, very interested in your creation, but them to be very skeptical. How would you kind of demonstrate expertise to that person? Write in a piece of paper, and the magic happens with editing. And so I would say, then put it away. And then the next day, go back and read it. And you will find by the 3rd or 4th iteration, the first 3 drafts are going to suck because it's going to be very kind of, there isn't going to be that much emotional payoff because you'll be just like, yeah, we did it. We worked on it. We did it. And then you'll have to, when you look at it the next day, you'll be forced to kind of say, well, how exactly did we, let me jog my memory. Oh, wait a minute. I remember that. That was a nightmare. We almost killed ourselves doing that. And you'll then start expanding on that. And then you'll edit it down by the 3rd or 4th iteration, and you'll have something really interesting. That's your first cut.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that. You gotta dig a little before you get to the gems. So
That's right.
yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on, Rishi, that we didn't get to?
I don't think so. I think we've covered this. I think we've covered everything we had to. We want to keep this short and to the point. I think this is great. Thank you for asking me these questions today. It kind of forced me to jog my memory as to, what is demonstration of expertise.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And, for people who want to hear more about that, by all means, there's tons of this information on our blog. Rishi is incredibly active on LinkedIn. And if you want, if you've got a product page that you think we can help with, drop Rishi a line.
See you guys. Thanks a lot, Simon.
Thank you.